Good morning. This is Rick Gleason and Don King coming to you from the heartbeat of worker health and safety. And we're from the University of Washington Region 10 OSHA Training Center. And we're in the School of Public Health here at the University of Washington. We do podcasts relating to anything for worker health and safety or people health and safety. So Don, can you tell us a little bit about our two special guests today?
Yes, Rick, I certainly can. I've worked in this business for a few years, and I will say that it's not often that you can get two people who have worked and done some of the things the two people we have as guests today have done in the field of caring for people. So I'm going to first introduce Dr. Krista Geller. She is comes to us from an unbelievable background in education. She has a bachelor's degree from, I believe, Radford University, and then she went on to get her master's and doctorate from Virginia Tech, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And so then you say to yourself, well, here's a person that's into academia. But one thing you'll have to understand about Krista is she has been in the humanistic element since childhood because her father is Scott Geller, Dr. Geller. So she understands a lot of things that most people may not even come close to understanding since she was little. But anyway, not only has she gone on and done some great research, and she was on the newspaper editing at the university, wrote many great articles, but then she actually went out into the world and she worked for Devon Energy and DPR, and then went to work for Bechta. Now, that is something that is not usually taking place when a person has that kind of a background in academia, in my experience. So I find it very exciting to have someone who works in the field of safety and human behavior and all these things put together, but actually has field experience talking and looking and working with people out in the field. So it's very exciting to have her talk with us today. And of course, her father, Dr. Scott Geller, anyone who has been in the industry for any time at all knows that Dr. Geller has written many books, I believe 49 books. He's got 88 book chapters, 270 magazine articles. I could go on forever on the things he's done. 5 decades that he's been a faculty member and director on applied behavior systems at Virginia Tech. He also has spoken many times at the ASSP and the NSC. And if you have not been able to hear one of his talks, you're missing something and you need to get it. So without taking up any more time, I would like to turn it over to the Gellers and have them go ahead and give us a wonderful talk on how it is when you care for people.
Thank you, Don. On the way, it is more than caring for people. It's actively caring for people. We all care. I mean, we hear about the shootings last weekend. I'm telling you, we cry with the victims, and it is so sad. But do we actively care? And really, that's what I think needs to happen. This movement, by the way, started after our tragedy at Virginia Tech, April 16th, 2007. And Krista taught several of the students who passed away that day, who were shot. And it was amazing how the community came together, as they are in Dayton. And they're coming together, and they're caring and they're showing. But what we realized is, how can we be proactive? How can we do this before the tragedy? Before we have to hug and cry and grieve over losses. We want to be proactive. And that's what the actively caring movement is about. And maybe Krista will tell us a little bit about how it works. I mean, she started a company, Geller AC4P, .org or .com, and on that organization really is attempting to spread the movement worldwide.
And thank you so much, Don, for the introduction. I mean, you're right. I got a very rare, and I must say blessed education that often probably needed therapy in many of the times I grew up with my father. And in the beginning, of course, as a child, and I'm sure all of us can remember those years when we didn't have to pay bills, we could just enjoy ourselves. And you're thrown into these experiments and these research chapters and these ideas. In the very beginning, even till probably I was 16 or 17, I probably didn't grasp a lot of the concepts and things that I was learning. But if you think about it, the research projects were laying a very strong foundation. And it's incredible today, as I went through my education and then as I had boots on the ground out there in the field, how I was able to derive from those experiments when I was just 13, 14, 15, how I can now see those learning experiences and opportunities, how they impact me today. So it's really, you said it, because it's very rare actually to be in the situation that I'm in, because both my father and I can travel to these conferences, and we're a team, and then in a way where I know I've grown up with the concepts and the amazing ideals that he's come up with, and I've been able to see them in play. And it's funny, when I graduated from Radford University, I wasn't quite sure what to do, and going for your master's and PhD just seemed like the next logical step, since everybody in my family had theirs. So okay, let's be going. And it wasn't until I graduated my PhD that I really needed to see what was out there. I was teaching at the university, and I had a couple of adjunct positions at other universities. But once I stepped boots on the ground, that's when I realized a lot of the comments that, Dad, you just made is about being proactive. Because out there in the field and in the safety on the job, we want to be proactive. But it's really interesting because you're dealing with human behavior. And like you said, Don, yeah, there's not very many people in the academic side of my education that come into the safety manager roles that I've been able to acquire. And it's been a great learning experience for me, and I hope a great learning experience for my colleagues and the folks that I've gotten the opportunities to work with, because I'm bringing another side of it to the table. I'm bringing human behavior to the table. So when you're passing on a safety process or program out into the field, and you're expecting these guys who come, and these ladies who come in and day out, who are used to doing the same behavior, they know what to do, they've been doing it for years, and the consequences of getting hurt have been so mild that it hasn't been enough for them to actually change their behavior for the safer outcome. So coming to the table with that human behavior side and being able to add that touch to some of these safety processes is why I've really gotten a front row seat to how careful we have to be when we do send out a directive, or when we do tell our teams we need to do something. Because you'll find that the message that comes down from corporate, when it hits those field offices, we often don't pay enough attention to the culture. We can have a different culture from Texas to Tennessee to Tbilisi, Georgia, and we have to be very cognizant of the culture that we're talking to and how are they going to embrace the safety process we're passing along. Because as everyone's always told me, and my father has always said, you're unique, Krista, you're unique. Well, that plays along with everybody. We're all unique. So it really, you have to put emphasis on the process you're passing down and look at the culture that's about to adapt it. and how do you need to change that process in order to fit that culture. And I had a really great opportunity to learn that working for Bechtel for 5 years. I traveled the globe figuring out, how can we take our people-based safety process and adapt it to fit the different cultures that we were working in. And, I thank my father up and down because he is the one that brought me into this actively caring for people, and we start to look at it's beyond safety. It's the common conversation that you have out there in the field. It's that one-on-one. It doesn't have to be that we're just looking out for your safety. Maybe we're stopping for a minute and having a conversation. So those are some of the biggest nuggets that I've pulled out of my education and the experiences that I've had in the field. And the other thing that I will say, and my father has quoted this to me several times, he has said, a lot of times once somebody becomes a consultant, they stop learning. And one of the things that he taught me is he likes to learn something every day. And when I go into to teach a class or I do a presentation, I ask the group, how many of you like to learn something? Who wants to learn something today? Because I think that's the other avenue, is we have to be open to learn something, take off our blinders, and look at the person from their perception. Where are they coming from, and what can I glean from them in order to improve my own safe behavior, or just my actively caring for people behavior in general?
Well, what I'm finding exciting about where we're going and what I keep hearing from both of you is we're getting into what we call people-based safety. And when you say that, people-based safety, the people are like, oh, this is talking about us. This is not behavior, and nothing against all the research that you've done, Scott, because I realize it fits into right where we are now, and that's why you got that actively caring for people. But it's so great when you say people-based safety, because they're like, oh, that's us. They're talking about us. We're in this. That, I think, makes a big difference.
And another way to summarize some of what Krista just said is this academic term, humanistic behaviorism. When Krista talks about learning what the culture is, or learning where the other people are coming from, or when you give a directive, be careful that how the people will receive, will they accept that directive? She's talking about humanism. And so we did start behavior-based safety in 1979, believe it or not. In 1979 at Virginia Tech, we started doing behavior-based safety. And Krista as a kid was a subject in some of our behavior-based safety stuff. We started with promoting safety belt use. But my point is, the consultants took it and they stopped learning. We learned that behavior-based safety has to be humanistic. I'll give you a quick example. Feedback is essential. You have to give people behavior-based feedback. But when you give corrective feedback, that is, when you correct someone, you have to be humanistic. You have to ask more questions. You have to ask the person, why did you do it that way? When you say that's wrong, there's no information in that. That turns people off. That's wrong. Stop that. You have to be humanistic. So now we're calling it humanistic behaviorism. By the way, that's actively caring. Active behavior. Caring humanism. So actively caring is the popular term for the academic term of humanistic behaviorism.
Very good. So let me ask you a question, Krista. When you went to DPR, how was that when you stepped down in there at the beginning?
Well, that's interesting. So the first company I actually stepped my feet in was Devon Energy, which is an oil and gas company located in Oklahoma City. And, of course, if I walked into a room with a bunch of senior vice presidents, I'm there to have a meeting, the meeting will stop. All the vice presidents will look at me and say, how's your dad doing? Tell your dad I said hi. So a lot of times I walked into the room with this protective cape on that, I'm Scott Geller's daughter. And even though it was a protective cape, at the same time, it also provided me a bar that I had to step up to. This is Scott's kid. She's got to know what's going on. So many times my dad was on my speed dial when it came to a quick question or a quick reference as to, hey, am I understanding this correctly, Dad? And, Devon Energy was great because that was where I didn't travel the world, but I traveled the United States. And I got a first glimpse, and I'm out there on the project. I'm out on oil rigs, talking with the guys, which, got to be honest, mostly guys. I mean, it was not uncommon for me to be the only woman at the table of 15 guys. And usually if there was another woman in there, she was usually the admin to the president or somebody, and she's taking the notes for the meeting. So that could be very intimidating because, I had to walk in there, and not only was I Scott Geller's kid, I was also a Dr. Geller myself. So it took, I'll tell you what, it took some courage. And, I had fun with it. I had some really good colleagues that I was able to learn from, and I also had some difficult ones, but it really gave me an overall insight into, okay, this is how we deal with people. And, when I moved into the construction industry, that's when I really saw it opened up even bigger because for Bechtel, construction, we did oil and gas, we did mining and metals, we did, one of the projects we built was the Dulles Rail out here, or the London Tube. So, we had these really big projects with a lot of people. And, it comes down to how are we communicating to those people? And I remember walking a project in Crossrail out in London, and I'm walking with two of the other safety managers, and I'm the global safety manager, so I'm here really checking on my team. Because I'm the global manager, I have the bright white hat that hasn't gotten dirty, and the high-vis vest that I'm wearing just came out of the packaging, so it still has the creases in it. So I'm walking the project, I'm bright and shiny, and you can imagine everybody's wondering, oh, who is she? Is she of some importance? And we walked up to a group of folks, and they stopped. They looked up, they saw us, they stopped, and they put on their gloves. But at a particular moment, they weren't working with their gloves. Saw me, put on their gloves. And the two safety managers I was with, they got so mad. They said, doesn't that just anger you? And I said, wait a second, guys, why? Why would that anger me? Because first off, they're going down the road that these guys are purposefully breaking the safety priority value by not wearing their gloves, that they're doing it on purpose. And I said, first off, that's your number one mistake, fellas. Don't ever assume that they're doing this on purpose. Anticipate, maybe they just finished eating lunch, took off their gloves, forgot to put them back on. Maybe they had to go pick up a couple of nails that fell on the ground, had to take off their gloves to pick them up, because sometimes you can't with some of the gloves that you wear. Whatever the situation, let's think positive. Then I said to them, let me throw something else at you. If I stood here as a reminder, if I was a simple reminder for those guys to stop work for a second and put on their gloves, that's absolutely brilliant. That means that I am the activator. I am the antecedent. I am a reminder that, I don't have my gloves on, and if I do not perform this behavior safely, there could be a consequence. So exactly. That's what I had to find myself educating constantly the guys I was working with, because you do get that hard overall feeling, though. Yeah. Because you're on the project.
Yes, you're right. Well, and that's where I'm trying to explain to them this authoritarian fear rule no longer works. That's over. Those days are gone.
Right.
So forget about that. But to your point, exactly, Krista, I was out on the job this morning, and there was a couple of pieces of metal, and the operator was standing there, and he said, oh, Don, look, that piece of metal, I'm going to have to grab that. And then he looked at me and he said, well, you know what, Don? I don't have my gloves on. And so he said, but I'm going to use this. And he took his foot and he kicked it over the side. He said, now I'll go get my gloves and I'll pick it up. There's exactly what you're talking about.
Yep. Absolutely.
They got it. They got it. Like, I'm not going to bang on him, but he knew, Don, I got to get my gloves on. I can't do this. Otherwise, Anyway.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, sometimes one of the programs, of course, was people-based safety that I rolled out on Bechtel. And we had to be very careful because I walked out to a project one time and I said, hey, guys, how's the people-based safety team going? And they said, you mean the people be snitching? And I said, wait a minute. Wait. This is people-based safety. And they said, no, Krista. They see us as snitches. They see us as, and I'm sorry, police officers. And it's so sad that we see our everyday police officer as negative, because when I see a police officer on the road, yeah, I have a reaction. I have classical conditioning. My heart starts beating. I might start sweating a little bit. But you know what I do? I check everything in my car. Am I buckled? Is my car inspected? Am I speeding? There's a top list that I check. And thank you to that police officer for being a reminder that I better check myself. And even though we have such a negative feeling, and so I say to the guys, listen, police officer's not negative, because we're not writing you a ticket. We're having a one-on-one conversation that's hopefully going to help you increase that safe behavior. And I have to tell the guys, you have to have patience. Even though you told this gentleman or lady yesterday to put on her gloves, and you see them again not wearing the gloves, breathe, deep breath, go up and remind that person again. Don't assume that because you reminded them yesterday, they're going to remember it till the end of their day. Because let's remember that we all have outside influencing factors in our lives that could be distracting us, that could be keeping us from thinking, or keeping our mind on the task at hand. So you take that opportunity as a safety manager, as a people-based safety, as the actively caring for people person, and you go and remind them, and you have that one-on-one conversation.
Boy, this is such good stuff here.
Notice how humanistic she is there. And the word is empathy. I would see it from the other person's perspective, and that's exactly the example that Krista is giving us. See it? How do they see it?
Absolutely. Hey, this is such good stuff here.
I have one more example I just have to share with you guys. An example that just absolutely floored me. I was on a project out in Australia, and we ran a safety cultural survey. And what we found out on the project was that employees who are out there building the project, you're talking 10,000, so it's a 10,000 big project. They are not getting a good night's sleep because the beds are too hard. And what happens when you go to this project is you have to go up to the desk and request what they call a pillow topper. And this pillow topper, it takes a couple days to get to you. You put it on the bed, and it's a much better night's sleep. What happens is when people go away on holiday or vacation, they come back, they're usually in a different room because it's a camp job. So you're living right there on the job. You're usually in a different room, and the pillow topper 90% of the time won't be there. You have to go and put it in another order. This safety cultural survey, what came back on it was the guys in the field, their perception was only managers, vice presidents, and upper-level folks were getting the pillow toppers. That they were not getting the pillow toppers, and this is ridiculous. And when the information came back, of course we know that's not true. That's not reality. But that's their perception. And what I try to teach my teams is, if that is the perception of the folks you have building your project, you better work really hard to change that perception. Don't get mad that that's their perception. Look at how you're sending the message out and where it might be getting mistranslated. So what do? You get pillow toppers for everybody. I mean, it's an easy fix, but you'd be surprised at how the pushback you get from people when they see that, only managers are getting pillow toppers. The response from the managers is always negative. How can they think that? But it's like Dad said, it's being humanistic. It's taking a moment, putting yourself in the shoes of the other person. And if that other person constantly sees the upper management folks getting the pillow toppers and they haven't gotten theirs in days or weeks or whatever the case, you can see how that might be their perception. So it's really working on, I find that the biggest piece out there, especially in safety, is communication. How are you communicating the message, and how is that message being perceived when you're done communicating it? Because not everybody's going to walk out with the same understanding of what you just said.
Got it. Hey, Krista,
could you... broadcast is body language.
Oh.
Yeah.
Good point. Hey, Krista, could you give us that website again? Scott mentioned gelleracfp.com. Did I get that right?
Yep, it's Geller, Geller, AC, the number 4, AC4P.com.
Okay, because I know people are going to be very interested and would like to know more and see more as we wrap up the podcast today. This would be a great place for people to be able to go to continue, learning about this issue. So, Don, I want to thank our guests so much today. And Don, can you give us some words of wisdom as we wrap up?
Well, what I would like to say is, again, thank you to Scott and Krista very much. And what I'm getting from the Gellers is they obtain their joy from teaching and sharing about caring. So that's what I get from them. And there's a Frenchman that wrote a great book. It's called Altruism. And he's saying, while it may be difficult to change the world, it is always possible to change the way we look at it.
I love it. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Can I add one more thing?
Please.
Can I add one thing?
Yes, Scott.
I've spent my whole career teaching the psychology of caring and so forth, and what a pleasure, I must say, to have a daughter to take over and to go the next step. I mean, most of us only have our lifetime to make a difference. But when you have a daughter who follows in your footsteps, you can say, "Man, I'm leaving, but somebody else is going to keep it going." 'Cause that's what it needs. We can't stop. We have to keep going. We have these tragedies happening. We need to change the culture. We need to cultivate an actively caring for people culture. And one more thing, if you go to that website, we have several books. We have books we have books for police officers. We have a book for school personnel. We have a book that Krista and I co-authored for safety professionals with the same basic research-based principles that teach you how to cultivate an actively caring for people culture.
That is so good. And it's been great to have Scott and Krista here today with us on the heartbeat of worker health and safety, the heartbeat of also just actively caring for people, as we learned today. So thank you so much to our guests. And again, this has been Rick Gleason and Don King from the University of Washington, Region 10 OSHA Training Center.
I was young and feisty, never did things by the book. Just let me get my toolbox and I'll take myself a look. I climbed up on the dozer with my mechanic's pride, said, "You can keep it running, friend," while I poke around inside. Shake hands with danger, meet a guy you ought to know. I used to laugh at safety, now they call me Three-Finger Joe. Though I learned a lesson, I forgot it soon enough. The nicks and burns and scratches showed the young ones I was tough. Till another morning, I was grinding on some steel. My other hand got careless and fed my skin into the wheel. Shake hands with danger, step right up and say hello. Grinding wheels and metal are what made me Three-Finger Joe. I've seen mechanics burning, and I've seen them take a fall just to save themselves a minute, and I've seen them lose it all. I've watched them courting trouble, seen them take a chance and lose. They get careless for a moment, spend a lifetime with the blues. Shake hands with danger. Shake hands with danger. Shake hands with danger. Shake hands with danger. Shake hands with danger and some friends I used to know. Compared to them, I'm lucky to be just Three-Finger Joe.